This is Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. When I think about the critical issues facing Black and Brown residents in the St. Louis area, I often ask the questions: how did we get here? What's holding us back? And how do we progress? At 9 PBS, we want to deepen our understanding and change the narrative. Join me as I look for answers and discover solutions on today's podcast. Today on Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel, why would a man leading his own successful marketing agency with no experience as a builder shift his attention to economic development? For Kevin Bryant, it was something between a coincidence and a calling. As executive founder, developer, and president of Kingsway Development, LLC, he'll explain how he's taking a bite out of the overwhelming number of vacant properties in the city of St. Louis that impact the Black community, and the change he's already seeing as a result. That's next on Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel on 9 PBS.
Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel is supported in part by Midwest Bank Center, the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation, and Orvin and Latrice Kimbrough.
Welcome back for another edition of Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. Thank you so much. First of all, to those of you who are subscribers, the numbers are just ticking up and up and up, and we need more of you to come on in. Being a subscriber means that you get alerted when a new episode drops. So click the button right now as we speak. And the like button is there for you to touch as well, because you will like this conversation. I promise you, it's another good one. Can I just brag and say that I don't know why I say that, because it's just a given. On Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel, it is a given that these are going to be great conversations. I have been so blessed to be here in the St. Louis region for about 30 years. And in that time, I have met a lot of people, made a lot of connections, and I am using those connections now to bring you the people that are making a way in St. Louis, in this region. And here at 9 PBS, we want to change the narrative. And that is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And one way to change the narrative is to understand who we are, to understand what is happening, and to answer these questions. How did we get here in the first place? That's a question that includes some history, right? Studying where we were and how we got here. And then who or what is standing in our way, and what do we need to do to progress? And so I'm bringing all of that energy together, all of my background together to answer those questions and bring you important people and important conversations. So that's why you're just going to like the podcast. So like it, subscribe, leave your comments. You can even download it, watch it later, and then share, because it's good to share. Your mother taught you that when you were little. So share. So again, thank you so much. And thank you to 9 PBS for putting their faith behind this project. Come January, we will kick off season 2, and we're working on that right now. I'm trying to think what would be the first show back. I already know, but you need to come back and check it out for yourself. We're planning some great things in 2025. So this conversation today is important because when I drive to and through St. Louis, you see beautiful buildings, and then you see a burned out shell, and then you see a fantastic block, and then you see a dilapidated block of vacant homes. We have known for a long time in St. Louis that we have too many vacant properties. So enter the developers, enter those who are leading this community. How are they turning things around? Because there are those that are turning things around. And Kevin, you are one of them.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Welcome in.
Thank you for having me.
So Kev, you're telling me all these stories, and I'm like, that's who you are.
Yes.
I saw the name. I knew the name. I knew that he was that guy. You are that guy.
Yes, ma'am.
So you said to me that you always wanted to be the man beside the man, not the man, but now you're the man.
Yes, I am.
What does that mean in the first place?
Unfortunately.
Fortunately for us, the man beside the man.
It means all the responsibility, so being a creative person and a person that's always been, philanthropic is not a big deal. But when you also have the responsibility for how you affect communities. When people know your name, it gets very personal. You can't hide behind anyone else. You can't hide behind an organization. It's you. And so in a community development project like that, it is all eyes on me all the time.
And we are going to walk through why we are where we are in St. Louis in terms of development or lack thereof. And heaven knows you could have stayed where you were running a successful marketing agency. You have an incredible background, but then you stepped up and you stepped out to lead Kingsway. Walk us through what compelled you really to make that shift?
A lot of it was happenstance. Our office sat at the corner of Delmar and Euclid, which is right on the Mason-Dixon line. So we were there for about 20 years. We were able to see the Central West End just explode. But the community right to our north is Fountain Park, and we were watching that implode. Crime was getting out of control, and we got to a point where we had to decide if we were going to move the office. So around 2017, one of our clients was actually robbed outside my office waiting on me to get there. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Because, again, my computers work the same in Clayton as they do at Delmar and Euclid. So we decided we wanted to be a force for good right where we are. We're going to stick and stay. And at the time, St. Louis Development Corporation was one of our clients. So we started pitching to them the idea of us helping to find a developer for this community. It was a beautiful community. It's the Central West End.
Right.
It's just the dark side of town. So for us, it was like, let us see if we can be a force for good as long as we are here. And if we end up moving or if we end up going to Atlanta, at least we're not running. We're going because we made a decision to go there. And we wasn't ran out of our own community. So we pitched it to St. Louis Development Corporation. They asked us to get the community involved. We did about a year or two of charrettes, just saying, hey, if we start helping to find a developer for this community, would you all be in support of it? And they were like, yeah, as long as he looks like you. So, so we
because
were
they would be nervous if he didn't look like
right.
him.
So we were not starting out trying to be developers. We're marketing and advertising, but we knew how to organize. We knew how to plan. So we essentially agreed we would go as far as we can to develop this plan, a plan that would make sense. And the plan that we created ended up being submitted to the alderman, was Terry Kennedy at the time. And he said, we'll put an RFP out for developers. And that's why the actual adopted plan for the area is the Delmar Taylor Kings Highway plan. It's not the Kingsway plan.
Okay.
So our plan happened to win best of all the responses to the RFP. So then we were like the dog that chases the car to the stop sign, and it's like, what do we do now? We had to figure out how to be developers. So for the next couple of years, it was drinking through a fire hose because we were honored to take that responsibility seriously. And again, we were like, until someone stops us, we'll keep being developers. And, one of the things Otis Williams told us, who was president of SLDC at the time, you're not asked to be an architect or a civil engineer.
You find those people.
Right. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like being a movie producer, right? So I have to be able to clearly communicate my vision to this community to people who are far more talented to me every day. But I don't have to figure out wardrobe. I don't have to be the boom mic operator.
Right. You're not the lighting guy.
Right. But I know how to hire and communicate the vision. And that's how we've been able to move forward. It's just finding the best in class for every component of that community that needs to be addressed.
There still is a what and a why, what compelled you and why did you, because when you say and describe this as drinking from a fire hose, which is an apt description, one could drown. So there's still a why. Why did you, because you could have walked away, did not even submit the RFP.
So parallel to my advertising career has always been community service. So I'm kind of still that guy. It's just when you put a challenge before me, I like trying to figure it out.
Oh, hard-headed too then.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Someone once said, if I have a problem got a problem.
Wait!
You know what I'm saying?
I love that so much.
So for me, I was like, okay, hard is good.
Okay.
Difficult is good.
Okay.
We didn't go to the moon because it's easy. We went because it's hard. So for us, it was like, I like trying to figure out the why. Why do our communities look like this?
Yeah.
Why are our, because that's consistent all over the country.
All over the country.
So you start bumping into, redlining and segregation and the history of intentionality of these communities. You bump into not only integration, which causes white flight, but black flight that chases it. And then these communities become bottomed out and attract bottom feeders. So for us, we were like, but that's solvable.
Yes, it is.
Especially in an area that's the Central West End. It's the same homes. We rehabbed our first home, sold it for about $285,000 in a community that was appraising at $90,000 per property. These are 2,500 square foot brick homes, right? The contractor said, come across the street 100 yards. I just finished another home. The exact same home that he had just finished across the street was on MLS for $750,000. Right. So we gave that home away at what it cost to rehab it. We didn't make $1. So for us, we were like, all right, so now we're seeing a pattern here.
Right.
And we're going to see if we can affect that pattern for the good. And that's essentially what got us motivated to keep trying to figure out how to be developers, and what also gave us the blueprint for success thus far.
So I have to read this because Kingsway development is different clearly than what people think of as a developer. Somebody who will come in and buy a property and then maybe bulldoze it because it's and then tear down the mansion and build the bigger mansion.
Correct.
And then we'll talk about gentrification because that is a very real part of this. For instance, you don't use eminent domain at all.
No, not a part of the development rights.
Was that okay?
So one of the agreements with trusting a first-time developer to have master development rights was we had to take eminent domain off the table. So I couldn't use it as a hammer to bully anybody out of their property, but it was never part of our formula.
Anyway.
No. So we'll start with gentrification. So what we figured out was you can gentrify without displacement. Displacement is the bad word.
Right.
When you're dealing in an area that has a block with 2 houses left on it, the minute you build a market rate house, you're gentrifying, because you're bringing a market rate house to a house that has appraisals that's 40% below AMI. So for us, we knew if we put new houses on a block that needed new houses, that people's tax burden would go up. So the next thing we had to do was figure out how to stabilize that. Well, there are tools already on the books to do that. If you were a senior, your properties could be stopped where they are.
Your property taxes?
Correct. And then there was a circuit breaker program in the city of St. Louis that we were able to dust off and present to the community. So a lot of it was just educating people and also educating them that, your property values aren't low because you're winning. Your property values are low because there's no value on your community. That's why you can't go get a loan to rehab and fix your home. So stop thinking low property taxes is a win. You have no value, no equity. So we were able to kind of balance those two things. And a lot of it just came from getting the community involved so that they understood.
But what you're describing also is intentionality. You mentioned that word already because, like I said, Kingsway's not your average developer. No. You don't have the average intentions.
No. And because we didn't start off trying to be big, rich developers.
Right.
We started out trying to do some good in the community, right? We were like, how do we end up making a difference where we are? A lot of people are like, if you're successful, you should you should keep your business in the Black community. That may not even be where your market is. So what then becomes your purpose in that community? So for us, our market where we really ate our bread and butter wasn't the constituents of a bombed out neighborhood, right? So we were there trying to make a difference. What better difference can we make than to also stabilize that community and increase the value of that community? Now we're bringing our customers to that community, right? So it was a cyclical plan that ended up being something that we have just had tremendous success at.
I have to go back in your history at a time when I think you're on the corner raising money or something of that nature, and a young man says to you, how is it? Is what you say, does it work? And you said yes, and they said, well, I'm not sure because you broke like we broke.
That's right.
So to set that whole scene.
So parallel with my career in advertising, I was always in nonprofit organizations. So one of the founding members of Better Family Life, Tawhid Youth Group, me and a lot of the usual suspects come from that. So every time I had a job, I would create a youth program. So at that time, I was working for Parks and Recreation. We're at the corner of Sarah and West Bell, 110 degrees outside. I'm out here preaching to these young black men about what they can be when they grow up. And they were mesmerized. And finally, one of them said, Mr. Kevin, I love everything you're saying, but how do we know what you're saying works? And I was like, I'm your mentor. I'm older. I'm never going to hit. Yeah, but you broke like we broke. And so he was trying to understand the truth of what I was saying when I wasn't an example of it. I was standing there in one of 5 pair of pants that I owned, a little broke down Sentra, because I thought just being a mentor was enough. But they needed an example. And it was at that point, it was like out of the mouths of babes. I went back, finished my degree, opened a couple bookstores, and said, when I come back to this community, I'm going to come back with the word and the example.
He just in your face.
I think he was an angel. I don't even think he was a real boy at this point because I needed that.
Yeah.
I was getting stuck, into thinking that was enough, and it's not. Our kids need examples and blueprints and plans and steps and not just a hug and a role model.
And a meal.
Right.
And a backpack. Although they need a backpack and they need a hug and they need a meal.
All of the above.
They need all of that.
But
you're making me wonder now as well if we know that there are far too many people who that is what they're doing and that is for them. Maybe they feel like they've been called to do just that. But we have been called to do.
Yeah, if you knew better, you do better. So sometimes that was what I did, and I think I made a difference at for the time that I was doing it. But you have to graduate and move to the next level because our community demands that of us.
And they need excellence.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, not just a sandwich.
Excellence institutions is one of the failures of the civil rights movements. We really did not institutionalize those point of views. We fought for civil rights, not economics or power and the things that really could have stabilized. We should be owning our schools, and that's a whole rabbit hole. But that was a very valuable role at that time, and it changed the world. We just have to take the next steps.
When, since the pandemic, and then certainly after George Floyd was killed, we see more focus and we see backlash also.
Right.
But there was initially more focus on DEI, and then comes backlash and more focus on development, and there were always set asides, if you will, and backlash. But talk about disinvestment and the role of your intentionality. Because we know that there are hundreds of abandoned properties in St. Louis. And so one of the questions is, how did we get here? What is your view of how we got to this place?
There was intentionality, certainly in Fountain Park. You can go back 45 years ago, there was a plan called Team 4, and it was a decision to intentionally disinvest in Fountain Park. And it was because it was one of the first neighborhoods to be integrated, that in Lewis Place, of course. And once the neighborhood found out about it, they actually sued the city and abandoned that plan. But again, that's just a tiny example of what happens all over the country, right? Real estate is powerful. It's one of the few things that we can have access to that can change generationally how we live and provide wealth to our children. But others know that as well.
Right.
So they want to control those resources, whether we appreciate them or not. So when we bumped into those barriers, we did not start out trying to be a civil rights organization. We were just trying to change the fabric of that community, but you can't change one without affecting the other.
Right, and you can't change one without understanding.
You have to
I suppose you
understand
can, but it's good to understand.
Yes, or you're doomed to repeat it. In fact, there's a saying, I think it was Mark Twain, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that are going on right now that are forces preventing us from handing over that community back to the people that live in it, and also including the wealth of that community.
I always talk about something my husband said to me years and years ago. What lie are you believing about yourself? And that made me wonder, well, who told the lie in the first place?
That's right.
There are lies I believe about myself. I come against that right now. They're not lies I believe. They're lies I used to believe about myself. But one of those lies is that, black people don't care. Black people don't care about education.
Yeah.
Black people, you can't run businesses.
Right.
It's not that long ago that black people couldn't be the quarterback because
That's
you
right.
didn't have the mindset
That's right.
to do that.
Right.
All of these things
Right.
are lies that keep us from seeing our full worth and value and purpose.
Sure. They were intentionally taught to us. Like,
Right.
we're very conditioned people. We're people who have been through a lot of hardship, and nobody wants to go back to the whip. Integration caused a lot of that. We had successful businesses. We had successful communities. But the delusion of inclusion is a sleeping pill,
Oh, my goodness.
and by the time you get to a point where you want the best for your children, if your neighborhood is on a decline, it's like, baby, go. It don't come back, and we don't stick and stay in these communities. And so others peep that, and they'll find the opportunity to buy out all the vacancies in the neighborhood, and to a point where we are walking away from it. And the next thing you know, it's Soho, or it's,
Right.
one of these other communities that we gave it up.
So I used to live in Kansas City in my 20s, and I was just in Kansas City a couple of weeks ago, and we were driving, and I told my husband, I think we just drove past the apartment where I used to live, the house, and it was on 39th and Troost.
Right.
Now, anybody who knows Kansas City, who was there at any time in the 70s and 80s, Troost was drugs,
Yes.
prostitutes, and I
Yes.
lived on 39th and Troost, just a
Right.
block. I could smell the Church's chicken.
Right.
And I had never seen Church's Chicken. I was
Yes.
21 when I moved there.
Yes.
And so when we went back a couple of weeks ago, someone said to me, well, you wouldn't even recognize it today because it has been gentrified.
Yes.
And I went to get my makeup done, and I'm in this spot, and the lady doing my makeup, young lady, I mean, she's 40, but she said, and somebody walked by with their what is that little pit bull thing, that toy? I can't think of the name of this dog, but it's $1,000 dog. And people are walking by with their dogs, and they're going to get their APAs. And so she said, yeah, it's been gentrified.
For sure.
The place that I recall.
For sure.
So how do urban planners, because urban planning it's a degree. It's a real mindset, a real work.
Yes.
How do you avoid gentrification that drives out existing residents? You spoke about this a little bit.
It's intentionality. I mean, you don't have to drive out the residents. You have to create opportunities for them. Now, if you don't do that, then that's not your intention. So I was born in Saginaw, Michigan, and I watched Detroit die. Look at it now.
Right.
You know what I mean? At a place where people were fleeing Detroit like rats, and now it's like, okay, Quicken came in, bought up downtown, and created opportunities, and now people are seeing the opportunity to come back.
Transformation. Yeah.
Right. But it's, every American city has value. There's no place that doesn't have value. Even what we're doing now in Fountain Park, before we got started, people looked past Fountain Park. It was considered North St. Louis. But now that we've gotten involved, crime is down 82%. We're investing in new houses. You're starting to see the other side walking through the neighborhood in flip-flops, feeling safe. And now everybody is remembering, oh, this is the Central West End.
Which it always was.
It always was.
But how do you avoid pricing people out?
Well, you provide opportunities. So for me, every opportunity we've created comes with rehabbing a house that has some sort of tax credit on it, right?
Okay.
It keeps us from looking for a profit in the residential homes. So for us, anything around Fountain Park has a 40% tax credit called the historic tax credit. The houses we've rehabbed so far have an NPA, Neighborhood Preservation Act tax credit.
Okay.
So for us, that's like having a $50,000, $60,000 discount on account cost to rehab. The moral of the story is development should always be a public-private partnership. It is not the developer's burden to fix your community, right? The city has to be involved in order to create those incentives. So as long as we're working in partnership with the city or the state, we can provide incentives and give you a home with a valuation of $700,000 that maybe cost you $300,000, which is just the cost of rehab.
Right. And so you talked about the master
Development
So you are a master. You have that.
I have master development rights as of
until
2019.
Okay.
So it's a 10-year contract with SLDC.
And what does that mean?
Basically, you have tax abatement, which means that if you're rehabbing your houses, I can make sure I don't raise your taxes or your taxes doesn't raise. And we have first dibs over LRA property. LRA property is the vacant property in an area. And St. Louis is one of the largest land banks in the country.
Meaning they own?
They own houses that were lost at tax sales, that were foreclosed upon. And when we, out of the 200 acres, when we first took on that contract, there was 180 vacant homes in that community. And that was really what was causing most of the crime.
Right.
We got lucky in that when we started buying the initial 40 homes that surrounded Fountain Park in the first 3 blocks, the bad actors didn't live in that neighborhood. So we were able to challenge them with restraining orders against them because you don't live there, right? Tip we picked up from the Central West End.
Okay.
Right? We found out that most of the bad actors were coming from as far as Illinois. So as long as we controlled the VACOs, we could control who stood outside of them and what they were doing.
Oh, my. Okay. And how often did you have to leverage that?
It took all of about 2 years, and it was not easy. It got dangerous. We invested in cameras, a couple of cameras tied into the real-time crime center. We had to encourage the seniors, because there's a lot of seniors in the community, to start back calling the police. Like, you got to get active. But there was fear of getting involved. So they had to see us and know that we were active.
And you were not leaving.
No, we were dug in. But Carol, one of the things that we love, though, is some of the people that were in the community that you would think would be problems actually started to support us. You know,
what was it about them that you would think they would be problems?
They were out doing what they do.
So are these people
being
who were
pharmaceutical distributors?
living the underbelly life.
Yes. But, and again,
how did they then did they leave that lifestyle behind?
No, they moved to other neighborhoods. So one of the tips I got from the police chief at the time was, Kevin, you're not going to stop crime, but you can move it. So with that in mind, we really started working with some of the guys to say, hey, this is your community. You know, you want your daughter to be able to ride her tricycle outside, don't you? And it really, they want the same thing you want. They may not have the tools. It's like they say, when the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Our job was to give them other tools and show them that we are you. Like, we want the same thing. And here's how. Because what you're doing is not sustainable. You know what I mean? What we're doing and what we're trying to expose you to is for generations to come. And
that's a different message than, okay, stop committing crime. Get out. We're going to arrest you. You
can't stop me from doing something if you're not providing an alternative.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't just say, don't eat, if that's the only way I know how to eat. You know, so what we were able to do is come and say, and here's some other opportunities. We can tell you about this job program. You can get involved with us. We can teach you how to flip houses. But what you're not going to do, you know
come on with it. Come on.
And we were, bold enough to have those conversations.
I was going to say that took some courage.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of
little cuckoo.
to roll up on the criminal element say.
The secret is you have to believe in what you're saying.
Yeah.
Not just say it.
Yeah.
And when you believe in what you're saying, they believe you.
I got to tell you, Kevin, I feel a way about the chief saying you can't stop crime, but you can move it. Because then you move it, that does hurt. Because
it does hurt.
You're moving it to someone else's who may not have a Kevin Bryant, who may not have a Kingsway development.
And it hurts to know that. And it hurts to know that the very resource that you reach out to come up with a solution may not have one.
Yeah.
Right? So what we were trying to do, and I think we've done it, is connect with the adjacent communities. And most of those communities have gotten very active. So our community next door is the West End neighborhood. They got active.
Right.
Sherman Academy got active. The Makers District kind of took on the commercial part of it. But again, I can't be everywhere. I only have so much bandwidth. So my problem is to drop my bucket right where I am.
Right.
You know.
But you did touch those individuals. Because I'm a seed planter
For sure.
and I've met people from Mr. Rogers, but Mr. Rogers Productions, and one of the producers with Mr. Rogers Productions. When I told her I was a seed planter, she said, "That's fantastic because I'm a waterer," and they have this whole philosophy, which I have know nothing about other than that.
Right.
So clearly, the way a plant grows, somebody plants the seed, someone's a waterer. Are you the sunlight? Who are
Yes.
you? Are you the pruner? Who are
Yes.
you?
Yes.
So you.
Yeah.
We're a seed planter in
Yeah.
that, and
For
you
sure.
send them on their way with this, and that's what
For sure.
Somebody's got to play their role.
And maybe even the light.
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right, because they were in darkness. Yeah,
right.
for sure.
So they see,
for sure.
oh,
There's
we
another.
can, he's just some guy. You know what I mean? So we can do it too. And that has caught hold
Yeah.
in a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah. I
neighborhoods
love it.
around St. Louis.
love
It's
it.
like there's
love
nothing magical about what we're doing. You know, there's no, I don't even have a degree in urban planning, right? So if I can be this successful with a degree in advertising, how successful can you be?
Amazing.
You know?
Amazing. I do want you to tell us about the 207 acres, $150 million development.
Sure.
That has a hotel,
Oh,
a theater. Just talk about it, Kevin.
We are very excited about the plans for Del Mar itself. So our commercial border on the Del Mar side is a half-mile strip from Kings Highway to Taylor.
Okay.
And our largest project is a 243-unit market-rate apartment building called The Bridge. We named it The Bridge to symbolically represent bridging both sides of the street. But again, rooftop bar, pool, all the amenities you see everywhere else right on Del Mar. The old bank, that was a nightclub there. We've captured that. That's going to be a banquet center that's in partnership with Pure Catering so that we can have our
Talk
own.
about some chicken wings now.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to get you hungry.
I promise you I was on their website this morning.
That's the guy.
Because they have an incredible brunch I've never been to.
Oh, Caramel Room Brunch
Caramel
is
Room
amazing.
yeah, anyway,
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
But we are bringing that to our community. In the rear of that bank is a ghost kitchen for young chefs.
Oh,
yeah.
come on now.
So the corner of Del Mar and Kings Highway, we're planning a 110-unit Marriott hotel. That was done after a study with Main Streets of America in terms of what is the best plan we can have for that corner because it's such an odd cut.
It is,
The corner of Del Mar and Taylor, we're still doing the land assemblage, but we're working on put a 54-unit artist loft in connection with the Black Rep Theater on that corner. And then our primary two projects that are under construction right now is Elevation Workspace. We took the old Union Sarah Economic Development Building, and we're turning that into our headquarters as well as an office for entrepreneurs. Downstairs is retail. So we have Postnet, Jamba Juice, Auntie Ann Pretzels, and we have a vacant space that we're not leasing yet because we're going to create a contest called Battle of the Bistros to attract chefs to that space. The beautiful part about this, when we started our plan, no franchises wanted to come into the neighborhood. So we bought the franchises, but now the franchises are on mission. So our Jamba Juice, our Auntie Anne's trains young entrepreneurs to be business owners. So you're not just making a smoothie, you're learning to run the business,
Absolutely.
right? So we couldn't have that if we didn't feel the rejection, but we embraced it. So now we own it, and we have our own junior achievement program right on Del Mar.
That's amazing.
And then lastly, our TIF is a $6.8 million TIF, which was matched by the governor with an additional $3.2 million grant for the improvement of the street itself. So now we're going to narrow the street from 4 to 2 to stop the drag racing, new street lights, new security, everything we need to really make that part of Del Mar walkable again.
And you bring up the governor because the governor just took all kinds of policies off the books, including set-asides, and DEI is no longer at the University of Missouri system.
Yes.
And yet the governor's the state is a part of what you're
Because
doing. So how do we as minority businesses or businesses focused on Black and brown people still be successful, still make a way without the help of those traditional policies?
So what we were able to do was grab money out of the infrastructure budget and use it to work in our own best interest. You know, we didn't get any support for our entrepreneurs. We didn't get any support for our businesses that are growing. We're still looking for that support. But in terms of the infrastructure, we need that too. The best part and the worst part about working in underserved communities is no matter what the offer is, we need it. So if there was a grant or a neighborhood cleanup, we need it.
Yeah.
If it was beautification, we need it. So we needed the infrastructure. So we were able to grab that and apply it to our larger goals.
Okay. And what is your advice to those who maybe they were looking at DEI or set asides, I should say, not necessarily DEI, but and I think that St. Louis City still has the requirement that 10 or 25%. No one ever meets it.
Right. We are meeting it. We're exceeding it.
Well, I take that back. I take that back.
But we have to make demands on our local politicians, and it's something that we have to hold people accountable. And there are too many people that are just running popularity contests. They get them elected, and then there's no accountability afterwards. Until they feel accountable, they will again continue to turn themselves over to whoever helped them get elected, which is usually a matter of money.
Right.
So for us, coming from a poor community, we don't have the ability to buy our politicians, but we do have voices, and we can hold them accountable.
And I tend to think, too, and wonder if those who should be in leadership are reluctant to do so because it looks like a mess.
No, they moved to Atlanta. So our best and brightest don't stay in our communities. I remember when my son was young, I was like, leave and don't come back, when he left for college.
I said that to mine.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we don't keep our talent here, and that was part of the reason why Cortex was created, because it was also happening in the larger community. St. Louis had to find a way, to keep these young talented people here, but we also got to keep them in our communities so that they can help govern and lead us.
Now, I will say my oldest went to Chicago, and I don't know if he'll ever come back. And I did tell him, go live. I know I love Chicago. I love Chicago. Our youngest is here, and I am trying to, not that I think he'll stay or not, but I am encouraging him to there's a wave.
Right.
And you get ahead of it.
Yes.
Because that's how you ride a wave.
Yes.
You see it coming.
Yes.
And we know it's here. And so I'm encouraging him. He's only 24.
And it's wide open.
It's wide open.
Because of the fertile soil, because of the low cost of living. I was landing in St. Louis one day, and a pilot said, we're now approaching our final descent to St. Louis. Please set your clocks back 10 years.
No! Are you serious?
Yes. And I kind of cringed, but I got it. This is how the country sees St. Louis.
That is horrible. When was that said?
3 years ago.
You're not going to tell me 20 years ago.
No. But again,
my
some of the things what me and my partner does, who's my partner with Kingsway, we travel a lot. We go to South Africa, everywhere, trying to see what's the latest draw to communities, right? And one of the things we notice is nothing is really unreachable in St. Louis. It's like, so when we do things like Elevation, it seems magical. That's 10 years old in Atlanta. It's called a gathering spot. You know what I mean? But
describe what Elevation is.
Elevation is our office and co-working space that we're opening. You know what I mean? So for us,
I thought you were describing an architectural design term.
No, Elevation Workspace. Yes. And even the Circuit Theater that we're building on as an addition to Elevation, it's just a city winery, but because it's in our community, all of a sudden it seems much more magical than what it is.
Right.
And it should, because it'll serve us. Even the name of it is called the Circuit Theater. That's short for the Chitlin Circuit. So it's a wink at us. You know what I mean? But it also speaks to the future that we're trying to bring back to that community.
Your website has just one phrase that jumped out at me, describes this moment and your role in it as an historic opportunity. Explain why that's the case.
Because, what we set out to do is really inspire other communities to look at the process of being developers in their own space, right? And that's, for us, something that we have to get back to. Like we champion Black Wall Street a lot.
Right.
It's become something that you hear. But there was a lot of Black Wall Streets around
all
the
over.
country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we can remind our young people of that, not so much people my age, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But those young, like your son and those 20-year-olds, and get them to realize that they can then build out their own communities. That's historic, because we won't go backwards again.
No, we won't.
It will be a permanent move forward and in the right direction.
Talk about what the biggest challenge you face is. Is it public perception? Is it this issue of equity? Is it inequality? What is the greatest
Capitalization.
challenge? Okay.
Capitalization. For us, Public support wanes. It ebbs and flows. Some days we're champion. Other days it's like, what's taking you so long?
Right.
And why am I not in charge? So you have that's like reading the comments on Instagram.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Don't read your reviews, Kevin.
Right.
Don't read your reviews.
But capitalization is a nightmare because you're still in an underserved census tract. Those communities, no matter what banks say, are still redlined. So it's hard to bring capital. Now you're talking about a first-time black developer. That's a bad bet. So for us, it's been finding the partners who get us and being able to raise capital, to do more of what we're already doing.
You brought me to one, which was one of my last questions, and it's a relevant question for me and for us on this podcast, and that is, as a black man, I would imagine you are in rooms, and perhaps you are one of two or three in the room, and have you been underestimated, unexpected?
Completely. We've been told point blank to our face, you don't have the balance sheet to do what you're trying to do, so we're not supporting you. And this is from prominent people in high places in the city, right? The same people would then make moves in our community despite us to try and do what we're doing. So that rears its head all the time. The one thing that protects me to a good degree is the development rights. So, as long as I'm controlling the incentives in the area, there's a barrier to you being successful in moving us out of the way. But trust me, when you go into a bank and you're asking for $1 million plus loan, the answer is no. And it's really trying to figure out how to get to the yes, how to make those asks so compelling that they'll fund you despite of what you look like.
I went to an event at the Heartland Black Chamber, and there were bankers there, and my husband and I went, and he's owned landscaping company, small company, for 20 years,
Sure.
and so we were there for that purpose. He is a member of the Black Chamber, and I said to the banker, I said, journalist question here, and I said, I'm sure that people have the mindset and have heard their own stories of black business owners, black people with an idea come in for a loan and they don't get it despite credit score, despite balance sheet, despite. And then feel that the U.S. bankers are clearly giving loans.
Sure.
Why do other people get loans,
Sure.
same credit score, same balance sheet? Why are they getting these and I can't get them? And he said, that hurts my heart. And I was like, I don't care nothing about your heart right now. I need you to man up and tell me why.
Yeah.
Tell me the truth.
Yeah. We know why, but again, CRA officers, DEI people who are hired to be black faces in high places don't have the title chief loan officer. So as much as they try, you really don't have the power to have nothing but the meeting.
And this was a white man, by the way.
Same
Same.
applies,
Yeah,
right?
same applies.
So for us, we have figured that out, and we've tried to figure out how to reverse engineer it. So when we present projects to our lenders, we're not coming like this. We're not coming trying to make you care about this community. We're trying to make a deal that pencils in a way where it is. You just got to tell me, Negro, no. You know what I mean? But you're not going to say this is a bad deal. You know what I mean?
It's a great deal.
It's a great deal.
Clearly.
And this is supposed to be what you do.
That part of it, though, Kevin, that part of it, that banks, there are rules.
But there are rules that have to be enforced, right?
But who, if not you, the bank, with all my money,
Sure.
all our money, if you're not going, who am I to get you to enforce what Congress said?
Well, nobody with that $3,200 you got in our bank. You no pressure.
You're being generous with $3,200, by the way.
But collectively.
Yeah.
Collectively.
That's what you said to the residents.
Yes.
You have voice.
Yes. Collectively, African Americans represent, I think in 2024, almost $1 trillion in this economy. Collectively, we have the money.
But you also said we are very conditioned.
Yes.
And one of the things we have been conditioned is to not be collective.
To not be and to live as individuals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we may have high individual self-esteem, but we have low group self-esteem. And so for us, we have to reconnect to us as a group, us as a and I worry about who's in charge and what they look
And
like.
was
But
mine,
really, is it
and
right?
right,
You know,
right. Greater good.
yes, and that they respect. Now you're speaking the language, but when you're coming in, nobody.
As one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I read a young black man who used to be in public office in the state of Missouri, and not in the city or the county, St. Louis City or county, who said, I don't consider myself black. I consider myself an American. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the I'm not black, I'm OJ.
No.
I mean, good luck with that.
And what is wrong with us coming? Because I know there are those of us
Right.
who feel why we shouldn't be doing that.
That's
we
not-
shouldn't set ourselves apart.
Right.
And then those who don't look like us who get
But-
concerned when we do come together.
But it depends on which small town you come from. Atlanta figured it out.
They sure did.
Kansas City figured it.
Unapologetically.
Yeah.
Unapologetically.
You know what I mean? It's uniquely here in one of the last slave states that we're still struggling with that.
My goodness.
You know what I mean? So for us, we have to have more examples of the Kingsways of conversations
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
And the young people are fearless. As
They
they
are.
figure it out,
They're
they will
impatient.
institutionalize it. But right now, we're letting them leave. We're letting them hang out on TikTok.
Well, you and I are telling them to leave. We told them to go.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And if we knew better, we do better.
You are in the midst of a 10-stage plan. Where are you? What is the 10-stage plan, and where are you in that
So
plan?
we're finally at construction. First couple years was just brutal planning and learning, trying to figure out how to move, how to plan, how to be inclusive. We created a neighborhood organization I think we're the only development agency that done that allows the community to have its own voice, right parallel with us. But we're finally, after crime has dropped and property has been acquired, able to build. And with that, we can now focus on, hopefully in the next year or two, seeing returns. So we have 4 homes under construction now. We've sold 4. We found that 4 at a time is probably the sweet spot, but we're dropping an entire block this spring. And from there, we're just going to go block to block.
Talk to me about if it's The Man in the Mirror, which is my favorite Michael Jackson song, that is standing in the way of progress here.
As far as
Who is standing in the way? What is in our way?
Well, at this point now, we're dealing with a little politics and a little competition from the wealthy side of the street, who we've uncovered the value. And so now there's a lot of people with wealth that are trying to move us out of the way. They can't. But it's an effort that creates friction we don't need. So for us, capital solves a lot of our problems. But in the face of not having the capital, we just ask for the patience for us to continue to do what we do.
Well, you have the master
Development rights. So we're 5 years in.
Yeah.
So we need to continue to keep this pace for the next 5 years and deliver this community on schedule. And I think we'll do it.
What happens after 5 years in 2029?
We could renew, but
Okay.
we're actually being asked to come to other communities. But we have to wait till this is delivered before I'm comfortable taking on another community. With the experience we've had over the last 5 years, we could probably do 5 of these at one time
Right.
if the capital matched the vision. But right now, it's still a lot of creativity in trying to get, right now we have about $80 million worth of projects under construction or at that point, and trying to figure out how to juggle that. Coming from 5 years ago, I had $100,000 in my bank account, is a miracle of God's grace that we've been this successful
My
so
goodness.
far.
And I had to even wrap my brain when I learned about you, and then I realized, well, I've always known about him. I just didn't put 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 together, because that's the way your career has been. But trying to wrap my brain around, you hear development, and then when you dig in, it's not what you
Right.
think it is. It's
Right.
very different. And it is clear that all of what you do is with a civic mindset.
Yeah, it is, because you gotta love this. It's thankless. It's not. Once we, like, unfortunately in our community, we really celebrate our heroes after they've passed. Posthumous. Martin Luther King, when he was alive, had a 60% approval rate. Malcolm X was a racist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not until we pass that we usually celebrate what's in our midst. So we're not doing it for likes or clicks or thank yous. We're doing it because the people that are on my team are really passionate about this. And we've gotten to a point where we are figuring out the blueprint to this, and we know we're going to be able to pass this to other communities, and that's what keeps us going.
And is a part of that civic mindset some of these civic issues, which is population loss, and you've already talked about 80+% reduction in crime in that particular neighborhood. So some of those issues, those are civic issues.
For sure. Crime is number one in these communities.
And is that your goal, is to increase population, reduce crime?
So we're not making any money on our residential houses right now. So our houses represent probably a 10% profit margin that we roll over into the next house, because the key to being successful is to stabilize the residential side. When we first started, we were like pitching Walgreens, CVS, like, who could we attract over here? First thing they wanted to know was rooftop counts. How many people were over there?
Right.
So until we stabilize the neighborhood with home owners, not renters, nothing else is going to be successful.
And here's the part that surprises a lot of people. One of my friends that I went to college with is a realtor, and she said to me some year before the pandemic, I would say, that, Carol, Black people want to live in North County. I am showing homes every day.
Absolutely. Because North County represented a step forward from the city a few years back. You know what I mean? And then you got, St. Charles, and then you got Lake St. Louis. We want the same thing everybody else wants: backyards and school districts.
But that also, Black people want to live in St. Louis.
Sure, we do.
But with those things in play, those civic issues dealt with.
We want to live in the city without the Boys in the Hood soundtrack. Because it is still central. We got great amenities in this town, from the zoo, the ballpark village, the art museum. Union Station is wonderful now.
And people love the history. They love. Do not talk to somebody. That's why I love this photo here.
Yes.
This is Beaumont. This is Beaumont High School.
Love it.
I went to college with someone who went to Beaumont and do not get her started on Beaumont.
No, this is a sense of pride that you go to town. Yeah,
there is a sense of pride. Although on that question, you're trying to judge me when you ask that question. Some of y'all, but there is a sense of pride, and people do want to.
It's a great town. Like St. Louis is still a gateway city, but we have some issues that have polarized us in a way that we have not fixed and are scared to address. In a lot of ways, I'm not. I have nothing to lose, right? So for us, it's like we can put those issues on the table the same time we're putting real estate on the table, because you got to fix both.
So the company, and I think you described it as a driving force for economic development. And in order to be successful, I believe you believe that it's all been about relationship building.
For sure. I mean, at the end of the day, you can have a successful business that I just do not support. So that comes from the marketing background. I for decades had to teach Black entrepreneurs, it's not enough to just have a wonderful barbecue sauce that you sell to Black people, right? Malls sells to the world. Right. You know what I mean? So you got to be able to get your stuff on the same shelves with the majority of the people and not just be locked into your community. So for me, I have to teach that on multiple levels during my day job, which is advertising, and during my weekend job, which is real estate development. The beautiful part about this project is the real estate is now becoming my day job, right? I am about to abandon the advertising company because it's one and the same.
Right. It is absolutely one and the same. What is next? Other than 207 acres and...
The biggest focus is Elevation Workspace.
Okay.
We will be open February of next year. We're going to open during Black History Month. We need people to come out and support these young people that are going to be in our franchises. We need people to support the entrepreneurs that have taken a chance to move their office from other places around the city back into this neighborhood, and let them know that, hey, we're here to support you.
Is your message the same to politicians as it is to to people.
Absolutely. Just with politicians, I just want to remind them, if I could, that development is a public-private partnership. It's not my responsibility to fix the community. It's ours, right? So everything that I do has to be in tandem with the local government if it's going to be successful. So I didn't break the community, but in 5 years, we've done more for this community than the city has done in the past 40, right? So moving forward, we have to work together to make sure that this community becomes a model for how you fix other neighborhoods around the city, because it was just little old us, and look how much we've accomplished.
Right. And development is, turning dirt and
Yes.
electrical and
Yes.
architecture and
Yes.
building and somebody moving. But you are in the midst of an attitude change.
Yes,
as,
yes.
in as much as
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah, a perspective change.
Yes,
You know what I
yes,
mean? So,
yes.
you and I can look at two things, the same thing, two different ways
Right.
completely. You know what I mean? Some people looked at this neighborhood 5 years ago and saw garbage. I saw an opportunity. I saw the Central West End, because that's what it was. So for me, changing the perspective of how people see these communities, it changes the esteem you have about your neighborhood. Now you see people sitting out on the porch again. You see people sweeping the sidewalk again. You didn't see that 5 years ago. Right?
Well, Kevin, I wish you well, because you need to succeed.
Thank you.
We all need you
Thank
to
you.
succeed, this entire region.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
There's
Thanks for
more.
having
There's
me.
so much more to this conversation, because you are
Yes.
not finished yet.
Nowhere, not by a long shot.
I'm glad you didn't decide to move to Atlanta.
No, I'm here. You stuck with me.
We're stuck with him. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on another episode of Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. I told you it would be one that you liked, so go ahead and go ahead and subscribe, and go ahead and share. Leave your comments. We love to read your comments about what you've heard here on Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. We thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another episode of, you guessed it, Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel.
Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel is supported in part by Midwest Bank Center, the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation, and Orvin and Latrice Kimbrough.